There is an attachment style that makes people destroy the exact relationship they are most desperate to keep, not because they don't care, not because they're broken in some obvious way, but because the part of their brain responsible for love learned something catastrophic before they were old enough to form a single memory about it, and it has been running the same program ever since. You probably know someone like this. You might be someone like this. And the most unsettling part is that most people who have it have no idea it has a name. Most people, when they hear about attachment styles, think of two: anxious and avoidant. The anxious person clings, the avoidant person runs. And somewhere in between, there's supposedly a healthy version, secure, the one nobody in a psychology comment section seems to have. But there's a fourth one that barely gets mentioned. One that doesn't fit neatly into either category because it is, in the most literal psychological sense, both at the same time. It's called fearful-avoidant attachment. Some researchers call it disorganized. And it is the only attachment pattern where the person simultaneously needs you desperately and cannot stop pushing you away. Here's the thing that should make you pause. Research consistently shows this is the pattern most associated with relationship trauma, chronic self-sabotage, and a very specific kind of loneliness. The kind where you're surrounded by people who love you and still feel completely alone. So the question isn't just what this pattern is. The question is how it gets built inside a person, what it actually looks like when it's running your relationships, and why, and this is the part most people miss. Insight alone almost never fixes it. Every attachment style starts in childhood. That part isn't controversial, but what makes disorganized attachment different is the specific situation it comes from, and it's not what most people assume. It doesn't require abuse. It doesn't require obvious neglect. What it requires is something far more psychologically confusing: a caregiver who was simultaneously a source of safety and a source of fear. Maybe they were loving 80% of the time and unpredictable or frightening the rest. Maybe they were struggling with their own unresolved trauma, and it leaked out in ways a child couldn't make sense of. Maybe the fear was subtle, a parent whose emotional state was so volatile that the child never knew which version of them was walking through the door. The psychologist Mary Main studied this at UC Berkeley, tracking children's attachment behaviors through what's called the strange situation, a standardized experiment where a caregiver briefly leaves a child alone and then returns. Securely attached children were upset when the parent left and soothed when they came back. Anxiously attached children were clingy and hard to settle. Avoidant children showed almost no visible reaction at all, but some children did something researchers didn't have a category for. When the caregiver returned, these children would approach and simultaneously retreat. They would reach their arms out and then freeze mid-movement. They would begin to cry and then go completely still, staring at nothing. Mary Main described it as a collapse of behavioral strategy, because when the person you're biologically wired to run toward for safety is also the source of the threat, you have nowhere to go. You can't approach. You can't avoid. Your nervous system gets caught in a loop it was never designed to handle. And the child learns something that no child should have to learn, that love and danger come from the same place. But here is where it gets disturbing. The problem with early attachment patterns is that they don't live in your memory. They live in your nervous system. They become a kind of operating system, a set of predictions your brain makes about what closeness means and what other people are likely to do. And the prediction the fearful-avoidant brain makes is this: people who get close to me will eventually hurt me, and I will also inevitably lose them. Both, at once, always. Researcher Kim Bartholomew at Simon Fraser University expanded on this in the late 1980s, building a model of adult attachment that mapped two underlying beliefs: your view of yourself and your view of other people. What she found was that fearful-avoidant adults held a negative view on both axes simultaneously. They believed they were fundamentally unworthy of love, and they believed other people were fundamentally untrustworthy. This combination is uniquely destabilizing. An anxiously attached person trusts others but doubts themselves. An avoidant person trusts themselves but keeps others at arm's length. A fearful avoidant person trusts neither and is drawn toward connection anyway because the longing for it never goes away. The result is a pattern that looks from the outside like extreme emotional inconsistency: hot and cold, present and then gone, intimate and then suddenly unreachable. But from the inside, it feels like being pulled in two directions with equal force. The closer someone gets, the more activated the threat system becomes. And the more the threat system activates, the more the attachment system screams for reassurance. Both systems run simultaneously, at full volume, all the time. And here is what most people in relationships with a fearful avoidant person never understand. The withdrawal is not rejection. The pulling away isn't because they stopped caring. It's because they care so much it became terrifying. And that distinction matters more than almost anything else in this video. Here is what no one explains clearly enough. The fearful avoidant pattern doesn't just cause relationship problems. It actively engineers the outcome it's most afraid of. It does this through a mechanism that researchers call hyperactivation and deactivation cycling. The person oscillates between two states, one where they are intensely, urgently seeking closeness, and one where they shut down completely and push people away. The switch between them can happen within a single conversation. What triggers the shutdown isn't indifference, it's the opposite. The shutdown is triggered by the moment of genuine intimacy, the moment someone gets close enough to actually matter, because that's the moment the old nervous system data fires that this is exactly the point where it went wrong before. And so the person does something that destroys them as much as it damages the relationship. They create distance right at the peak of connection. They pick a fight when things are going well. They disappear after a weekend that felt too good. They say something designed, unconsciously, to push you back to a safe distance. The cruelest part of this loop is that it confirms its own fears. The person pushes away, the partner eventually pulls back in confusion or hurt, and the fearful avoidant person's nervous system logs that as evidence. See, they were always going to leave. The wound gets a little deeper. The pattern gets a little more entrenched. Researcher Philip Shaver at UC Davis described this as a fundamental irony of disorganized attachment, that the protection strategy becomes the source of the very pain it was designed to prevent. This is the thing most people watching this haven't considered. If this pattern is operating in you, you are not sabotaging your relationships because you're broken. You're doing it because some part of you learned, at a cellular level, that the safest thing to do when love gets real is to make it stop. You meet someone, the connection is immediate and intense and feels unlike anything you've had before. You are completely in. You think about them constantly. And then somewhere around the point where it starts becoming real, where they start showing up consistently and treating you well, something in you goes quiet. The attraction doesn't disappear. It gets complicated by something you can't name. You start noticing their flaws in high resolution. You start wondering if you made it all up, or this. You're in a long relationship and it has been good. Your partner is patient and consistent and loves you in ways you've asked for. And on the nights it feels the most real, the nights that should feel the safest, you feel a specific kind of dread you can't explain. So you create a reason to be angry. You revisit an old argument. You go to bed with distance between you, and some part of you feels a strange, awful relief, or this one. Someone you love pulls away slightly, not even intentionally. They're just stressed or distracted or having a hard week. And your response is completely disproportionate. You need them to confirm you're okay right now in a way they can't possibly sustain. And when they can't give you that confirmation fast enough, you flip. You tell yourself they don't really care. You start building an exit, not because you want to leave, but because leaving first feels like the only move that doesn't end in being left. These are not character flaws. They are survival strategies. The problem is they were designed for a situation that no longer exists. And they run so automatically that by the time you notice what's happening, the damage is already done. Here is the reframe. The fearful avoidant pattern does not mean someone is incapable of love. The research actually suggests the opposite. People with disorganized attachment often feel everything more intensely than their securely attached counterparts. The capacity is enormous. The problem is the wiring around it, the part that was built in a moment of impossible contradiction and never updated with new information. The reason insight alone rarely fixes this isn't because the person doesn't understand themselves. It's because the pattern doesn't live in the cognitive brain. It lives in the structures beneath it, the parts that respond to cues before you're even conscious of them. You can know intellectually that your partner is safe, and your nervous system can still fire the alarm. Knowledge and felt safety are not the same thing. They use different systems. What does actually help, and this is slow, frustrating, non-linear work, is something called earned security. The idea that a nervous system built in chaos can be slowly rebuilt through consistent, predictable, safe experiences. Not a single person rescuing you, not a revelation, just repetition, evidence. A different kind of pattern, laid down experience by experience until the brain starts to update its predictions. But it requires something almost brutally difficult for someone with this pattern: staying when it gets intimate, staying when the alarm goes off, staying long enough for the experience to become the new data. And that's where this becomes genuinely uncomfortable. Because the question isn't just about whether change is possible. It's about what you owe yourself and what you owe the people who love you when your nervous system is running a program that was never meant for them. So here is the question to sit with, not to perform an answer in the comments, but to actually consider. Were you the one with the pattern, or were you the one trying to love someone through it? And looking back at how it ended, do you think you understood at the time what was actually happening? Or did it just feel like someone choosing, again and again, to leave? The answer to that question changes everything about what you grieve.